Darran, how are you?
Not too bad, Mick. How are things?
Not too bad. There was a lot of us, I think you included, I think most of the GAA fraternity were slightly occupied, at least in the latter stage of the weekend, by a different type of football and the European Championships final. But it was actually one of those interesting weekends of football that we needed the Donegal and Derry game to come alive to make it actually something memorable in terms of what we saw on the field, but actually in terms of talking points and these type of discussions that we tend to have every year about where the game is going. This was, we almost needed this weekend where it was a quiet enough one in terms of not that much going on the field. There was no hurling on. It was just these 5 games of football. And they all kind of had that bit of a story in them that we have to get into the old structures debate, Darran, I hate to say.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I suppose that's the only good thing about today is that there wasn't much to talk about on the football front, bar one game. The rest of them were fairly drab affairs, but like that, it always comes down to the rules and the regulations and what direction the game is going.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, let's actually talk about the football first, right? Because we can get to kind of what happened with Mayo and Leitrim and everything else. And it's not as if it was a one-off or the first time we've ever seen it either. But what we got in Donegal and Derry was an actual, I think anyway, it was 16-15. We'd probably see better games of football. But in terms of kind of the storyline of the game and Derry kind of going to try and this Division 3 team kind of coming to try and topple one of the All-Ireland contenders and almost getting there. And then a moment of magic winning it and the various different things that Derry could have done differently and so on and so forth. It was a really, really interesting game of football. From Derry's point of view, though, it feels like for so long we've been waiting on them to fulfill their potential, I suppose. The fact that they were in Division 3, you know what I mean? But they've flattered to deceive for so long. And then they went and did that this year. They won all their games by 20 points. And you're thinking, Jesus, are they actually going to be able to step it up to Donegal's level? And they did, really, but they just kind of couldn't get over that end line in the end. And it's like, you're almost thinking to yourself, geez, they'd love a backdoor for Derry. They could be really dangerous this year.
Yeah, I think for a lot of them now, and I suppose Derry supporters and players, they will think of it as an opportunity missed. But from the outside, you're thinking they have so much to build on for next year. It's actually exciting. I think they'll get a big reaction up in the county. I was only thinking yesterday, we played them in the league final 2008 and 2009. We lost in 2008 and beat them in 2009, and they've fallen dramatically since then. So, yeah, look, there'll be the initial disappointment, but this year's been a big step up for them, and you'd imagine it's going to be a great learning curve for a lot of them. They're going to come on like that. It was opportunities missed, and I suppose one thing that took me by surprise yesterday was just how poor and how slow-paced Donegal were when you took Michael Murphy out of it. So, look, from a Derry point of view, look, obviously the major disappointment. But for next year and the years coming on, I do expect them to keep coming up because like that. They were down Division 3. They were never a Division 3 team. But for whatever reason, they couldn't get it going. They seem to have a good group of players coming now at a good young age. They have a good structure there. And after that, it's just a bit of experience getting to play the better teams in the league. And I suppose that's the bother when you get down to Division 3 and Division 4. A lot of the teams you're playing aren't at a high enough standard. And then when you do play the better teams, decision making lets you down. The pace of the game come in the last 5-10 minutes, which is where they lost it. That's where you run out of steam.
Yeah. And that's more or less exactly what happened. But from Donegal's point of view, you mentioned we talked a couple of weeks ago sort of about them risking him against Down and saying, look, if they can't beat Derry without him, where are they going? And then you're thinking to yourself, they didn't really beat Derry without him. They needed really badly that in that experience coming on. They needed his ball winning ability, everything that Michael Murphy brings. And as you said, even their pace, everything is lacking without him. It's just like they're almost too reliant on him in everything they do on the field.
Yeah, it was very strange. Michael Murphy is a lot of things, but he's not lightning fast. But it was amazing how all of a sudden he came on and the pace of the game changed. We saw more out of Ryan McHugh. McBrearty, who'd been well shackled, all of a sudden was popping up. Also, McNeelish came on, which is not a good experienced player, so that was obviously going to help. But Michael Murphy came on, and it was the old reliables who all of a sudden kicked into gear. And it was like without him, they just lacked direction. They lacked a bit of leadership. And as soon as he came on, even the Derry players, their focus changed. And all it was we need to tear into Michael Murphy. I think 2 or 3 of them went to him straight away, hopping off him. The experienced Michael Murphy, he just kind of walked past him, kept going as if to say, look, I'm just here to win this game and get out the gap. And it was like their focus of both teams changed. Derry's focus went on trying to stop Michael Murphy instead of trying to stop Donegal. And Donegal were like, Michael's here now, let's up it a gear and let's win this game. So look, it was very interesting to see, but I'd be worried from a Donegal point of view if he can't get fully fit or if he does break down in the coming weeks.
Yeah, definitely. Like once they have him, they're going to be dangerous. But if he's not there, then what's the question? It's funny you mentioned. We spoke about it very briefly before we come on air about the Derry lads all just lining up to have the shoves and that kind of bravado that some people just really despise and in a game. But it's like, of all people not to do it, to Michael Murphy's not going to take the blindest bit of notice of it. Like, in fact, he'll keep his head down and get on with it. Did you experience much of that? Like, you would have come off the bench, smaller player, big wing back, probably trying to kind of like impose himself on you. And just how would you react to it then? Does it work on anyone? Because defenders all do it, so they must at least think it has some impact.
So the definitely defenders thing. No, I didn't get a whole pile of it. I think probably because I was smaller, but it tends to be the bigger lads who, for some reason, it's like going, I'm going to hop off this fella, and they're the fellas who probably don't feel it at all. So I wouldn't get much now. I'd only get a bit of talk or pulling and dragging, but like that, I used to be coming on with 15, 20 minutes to go, energy to burn, so I used to be running around the place. So, but I hate seeing it, to be honest. Like, I know it's kind of part and parcel of the game, it's in everything, but I just don't see the point in it. Even for someone like Michael Murphy, his experience, he didn't even bat an eyelid, he kept going. But the other part of it is he probably didn't feel it either. Like, so these fellas who have been on for 60 odd minutes or however long it was are actually burning their own energy, hopping off somebody who it's not going to affect. You know, so it's kind of counterproductive. You know, I could understand maybe doing it to someone who's a bit hot-headed and might swing back at you, but Michael Murphy's around a long time and he's been leading the line for Donegal for a long time, and he wasn't going to get affected by fellas hopping off him.
I'll go back to Derry Donegal in a sec, but seeing as we're on this subject, I just want to know what you made of the two sendings off at the weekend. So you had Michael Quinlivan kind of reacting to Gavin Crowley, depending on what angle you look at, whether it was actually a strike or some sort, like either way, it was a kind of a stupid dig. And you had Ronan McNamee getting sent off for Tyrone, and something that could cost him. Like, you know, you'd imagine I haven't seen the actual suspension, but you'd imagine he's going to miss the Donegal game this weekend anyway for kind of pawing off a Cavan player a couple of times. Divided opinion massively as to whether these. I think people want to see this kind of crap out of the game, but if you're suddenly being sent off for it, you are also, it's cruel and unusual in a way to just be kind of picked out of the bunch when it goes on in every game, you know?
Yeah. I'll be honest, I'm all for the red card for it. I just think fellas are, you know, they're pushing the boundaries and there's no need of it. So I think you start throwing out the red cards and getting fellas off, you'll get that habit gone. The one with Michael Quinlivan, like a little rabbit punch into the kidneys. But at the same time, and he's a Kerry man, Gavin Crowley should be punished more than the yellow card as well, because he's the one that initiates it. Yes, Michael Quinlivan is foolish and probably a bit of frustration from the way the game was going, but there's no need for it. Like, the free was won, ball was gone. It was just, I don't know. I think it's the only way to stamp it out and get rid of it, because it is all old shite, really. Like, you know, there's no need for it, and it only adds aggro later on in the game. So I'm all for it. I think fellas are acting the maggot and they're raising their hand or they're throwing these little, like, if you're going to get sent off, make sure it's for something worthwhile anyway. These little jabs, what's the point of it? Do you know? And I'm not telling fellas go throwing big ones. It is one that we're like, what is it? What's the need? What are you looking to achieve from it? Do you know what's it? If your man doesn't hit the deck, he's going to turn around, give you a little jab, and next thing you know, it's handbags. And there's nothing worse than watching handbags. It's just like kids in a playground, you know, just leave it off, grow up, get on with the game. Look, we want the physical side of it. We want the big hits, but there's nothing physical about what they're doing. Like, it's petulance, it's childish, it's stupid. I've never been a fan of it. Don't like getting involved in it as much as, like, sometimes you do get drawn into it, but I'm all for it if fellas are willing to, because it slows down the game, it interrupts everything, and some players do it because that's what they want. They want to slow up the game, so you punish them, get them off, and they won't do it again.
Well, there's a definitive response anyway. Yeah,
I sit on the fence.
No, on a day like this, I kind of tend to agree with you. I just, again, it's like once it's consistent, I suppose. You know what I mean? Let's actually get it out of the game instead of kind of
That's the
picking
big.
up the odd lad, you know?
It's the consistency. Well, amongst most of the rules, like
Yeah.
the same thing happened next week, and you get 2 yellows, or you might get a talking to. So, like, I think that's the big issue with a lot of the rules. It's consistency. What one referee sees as a red or a yellow, another referee doesn't. So.
Two more things I kind of wanted to just briefly talk about from the Donegal Derry game, and it's one of them is something that, like, in terms of Donegal, in terms of the winner, I don't think we should forget that McBrearty had that. Like, I thought of it as like Killian O'Connor in the equaliser in the All Ireland final that time. I think O'Connor's might be a little bit more brave in that they were losing the game and as opposed to going to extra time as McBrearty is, but still to just have the balls to kind of take on that shot and to trust your technique that you were going to score it. Derry couldn't do that and they didn't get their shot off, and it's unfortunate because they were low percentage shots and so on and so forth, but to kind of, you know, almost like retire on the stool, almost not kind of having that go of it, you know, is definitely disappointing for them.
Yeah, like, I suppose, like, McBrearty's point was outrageous. Probably had no right to go for it. It wasn't like he was kicking the lights out anyway. Chris McKaig had shackled him well all throughout. Like that, he kicked. Like, some people say it was a handy free before, but it was still a big score to kick. And like that, it was one of them ones. It's a percentage shot. When it goes over, brilliant. If it doesn't, you're going to get a bit of abuse. But you have to have the courage and the confidence in your own ability to go for it. And he did, and fortune favours the brave. And obviously up the other end, I didn't blame any of the Derry players for not taking that shot on. None of the shots were actually on. But I was just surprised that not one of them drew the man and actually tried to draw free, because we all know the referees are going to give the handy free there, draw, everyone goes home semi-happy. Like, so I could understand the players not going for it. To be fair, the shot wasn't on. Wasn't on.
Yeah.
And if they'd gone for it and driven it wide, why'd he go for that shot? So it's another one of them hindsight. You see it in the soccer as well, like, they'd be there and they were kind of, why don't they just swing it into the box there the last few minutes and something might come of it. In the end, it goes to a fella who shouldn't be shooting from 30 or 40 yards over the bar, put in amongst the mix or whatever. But I could understand the Derry lads not shooting from where they were.
Yeah.
But I suppose with the way the time was, you're thinking, look, you need someone with a bit of pace and a bit of power. Go at contact, little side step, hand goes out, you hit the deck, you're getting a free. And that's all it is. McGuigan had kicked a great score before it, where somebody went into contact with Michael Murphy. Actually, he held Michael's hand, pulled him down, free. You're always going to get him. So that was the biggest surprise and probably disappointment. And when they look back in it, the players will themselves go, geez, if I drew your man in there, there's a kickable free there. But from play, they would have been hitting hopes, and the likelihood of it going over is slim. And then you're opening up a world of abuse. Why was he shooting from there?
Absolutely, yeah. Look, the other thing, I don't want to be negative on Derek because I'm actually incredibly positive about them, and it's like fine margins, and it's almost the experience of playing in these big matches in a way. So it's not to be picking on them or to be negative. But the other thing that dawned on me, or just even watching the highlights of Kerry again this morning and seeing Clifford getting that chance, and look, I mean, it was a good goal chance for anyone, but for Clifford, you just knew bang, goal straight away. Now, I don't know whether that's a Clifford thing or a Kerry thing or whatever, but for Derry, there was just. It was like as if they didn't have that clinical. So I'm just wondering from your point of view, Kerry, I would feel through generations, you guys would always take your goal chances when they're there, try to get them. Dublin would for the most part, Kilkenny in the hurling, for example, as well. Do you know what I mean? It's just always like you go and you be ruthless when the opportunity arises because it's worth more than 3 points, really.
Yeah.
Is that something that's kind of inbuilt into you as a Kerry footballer from the first minute you go into the squad, or is it coached, or is it, or is it just David Clifford being David Clifford?
I think it's just David Clifford being David Clifford. To be fair, if I was more ruthless, I would have had 30 goals for Kerry. I think a lot of mine went over the bar. But yeah, look, it is one of them things. I think the better players, that's the difference. Everything is 9 out of 10 with David at the moment. It seems to be 10 out of 10, but that's the difference. The better players, they finish them, and the lesser players don't. So no, but like that, you're told at a young age, get in there, get into the back net, get in, get out, be done with it. But like we said earlier, Derry will rue the chances. There was a hand pass across the box, it's a handy tap in, and just that's the difference. But like you said, it is all positive for Derry. Yeah, they'll be disappointed today, but the steps they've made, and they're going to learn so much from it. And that's what it is about. It's about when you get these opportunities, you have to take them. Otherwise, the better teams will come back and punish you. Donegal didn't play well. They turned up for 10, 15 minutes and they were ruthless. And even when there were percentage shots, they were able to take them. So, look, obviously, David's goal was phenomenal when it went into his hands. Like, to be honest, most of the better forwards, you'd expect him to score there. But it's just the way he does it. It's just like it was poor defending. Like, if there's one fella, like, if I have a choice, do I leave the ball to David Clifford or do I give it to the wing back who's after running 60 yards with a few fellas around him? I'm staying on the wing. I'm staying on David Clifford and leaving the wing back, take his chances. So it was poor defending. It was tight angle, but it was just the way he finished it. It was just boom, off the boot. It flew past the goal before he knew it. So look, there's only a few players who can do what he does, but I wouldn't compare everyone to him. But it is one of the things they're gonna risk or rue the chances they missed. And look, you learn from it. It's not easy to take initially, but I do think it'll be all positive for Derry going forward for next year. It's just a pity that there's such a long break now.
Yeah, it was the game in the championship so far for sure. We should be getting into a few more kind of closer ones now. Anyway, we've got a Munster final to look forward to between Kerry and Cork. We've got Mayo and Galway in the Connacht final, and Donegal and Tyrone next week. Obviously, we probably don't have time to talk about Tyrone and Cork, and we'll definitely get to Mayo and that whole situation in a sec. But just from Kerry's point of view, then felt over like as soon as that game. They never really like massively stretched the scoreboard, but I get the impression another great performance from Sean O'Shea, another great performance from Paddy Clifford. David Clifford's on absolute fire. I just get the impression people are kind of satisfied with how things are going, that they're ticking up, they're motoring along through the championship so far. Yeah,
I think so. Look, some of the players, they look different this year. They look very business-like. They look very serious. Sean O'Shea is absolutely lifting. I think the arrival of Paddy Clifford on the scene, obviously he's playing well in his own right, but I think he's freed up Shawnee. I think over the last 2 years, Shawnee, the over-reliance on Shawnee to be the outlet there at centre forward, it's hard going. He was having to sprint 40, 50 yards with a man on his back, win a ball, try and turn his man, either play it in or shoot, and maybe get on the end of it. A lot of work there for one man. So the fact that Paddy comes out, he has energy to burn. He's a great footballer. He's an intelligent footballer. It's taken the burden of Shawnee being that sole ball winner there. He's drifting closer to goal and he's flying. But no, Kerry, as a supporter, no, you'd be happy with how it's going. Look, obviously, 11 points last day against the Munster champions. It was a good win. I would have expected more. Could have been more. Yeah, they could have doubled that, to be honest. They were playing at their ease or strolling. The game was over at half time. But they're motoring nicely. I expect them to have no real issues with Cork. I don't think Cork are at the standard at all. I think the only hope Cork have against Kerry is if it's slashing rain and if it's a bad windy day. But no, from a Kerry point of view, you'd be delighted with how they're motoring. They seem to be up in the gear. The backs have tightened up massively since the Dublin game. Mike Breen from Beaufort has come in, looks incredibly comfortable at the number 5. Gavin White is like a machine up and down. Tom Sullivan is getting more minutes into the legs. He was put up as a spare man the weekend, kicked 2, Pine should have got 3. So look, it's moving in the right direction. Look, we're nowhere near where I suppose Kerry want to be or where Pete Keane will want them to be, but they are going in the right direction. And like that, as the opposition standard gets better, you'd imagine Kerry will get better with it.
Yeah. It's amazing a player like Thomas Sullivan can be the best marker in the country and also can do such a good job as a free man and kind of get a couple of scores and stuff like that. Just the array of talent in one player is always kind of surprising to me. You know, he could play a match where he could touch the ball for 70 minutes and be man of the match, or he could dominate a game like he did Cork.
And the most impressive thing for Tom was a wing back, and he was your attacking wing back, get a couple of scores, and if you were the wing forward marking, we're going, but he'll be loose and I'll be able to do a bit of damage as well. But they put him into this cornerback role, maybe a bit of trial and error, see how, and he's just sacrificed his own game when he's in there, and this is my job, I'm going to nail you down. And he's Kerry's best marker now. And the great thing about it is he doesn't have to mark, leave him off. He glides up the pitch and he's very comfortable in front of goals and pick a pass or to score. So tis a great option for Kerry to have.
Absolutely. On to the sort of elephant in the room then. We don't have to spend all day in it, but I mean, yourself like shared a text during the Mayo Leitrim game yesterday, or it was just like what's the point of it? Like, it was hard to watch. But the funny thing about it, Darren, was it wasn't unpredictable. It was like, it's on TV, so everyone's watching it. But they beat Leitrim by 24 points. They beat Sligo by 20 points beforehand. There's games like this. The Munster quarterfinals weren't too far off it. And, the conversation is going to be kind of, how do we do it better? But like, I know it's something that Morris wrote about, and we'll be talking to him about in a few minutes. But if you just kind of say, right, we'll just have the second tier and don't let these teams play each other anymore as well, that's not going to fix the problem either. That's not going to help Leitrim either. They might get better matches, but it's not going to improve them. We need really to just reinvent almost how we organise the GAA at this stage, county by county, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. Look, hindsight's a fine thing. I think we probably missed a trick there with COVID, with rearranging the whole structure. Look, I don't think anybody wants to get rid of the provincial championships, but they're not working. They're not entertaining. You get to the final, bar Ulster, maybe Connacht, they're not going to be great games. They're not going to be that looking forward to them. Not at the moment. Maybe it'll change. But honestly, I think it is a case that your provincial now has to be your pre-season. It gives the smaller counties a chance to win it, because I suppose everyone's the fitness isn't where it wants to be. You play your league, and then it has to be a bit of an open draw, and maybe you start the lesser teams and they start the competition a bit earlier, playing a bit of a round robin to get into the opportunity of playing in the bigger competition. But the only way to improve is playing games, and a lot of these, I suppose, the lesser teams or the struggling team, they're not playing enough games. They finish the league, they get one championship game worth of hiding, and then you're done for 6 or 8 months. So the likes of Kerry or Dublin or Donegal, whoever it is, get to the latter stages, they're constantly improving, they're constantly finding new players. But the teams that you want to improve are sitting at home.
Yeah.
And they're not getting the same TV time, which I suppose Leitrim lads will probably tell you after the weekend that they didn't want. And then everything, the conveyor belt stops, because you don't have younger lads seeing these boys play every day. They need to be playing teams at their own level regularly. And that's the only way to improve. You're not going to improve by going out playing a team that is just too good for you, and they're hammered, because you lose interest. And the kids, like, if you're a kid now in Leitrim, you're a bit disheartened by it. Do you really want to be there going, I want to go up and play against Mayo and get beaten by 20? You don't. So there's a knock-on effect to it.
There's no dream there for them anymore.
No, like for these lads, I just, like, do you know what? These fellas won't want any pity or anything like that. But I felt sorry for them. They were playing a team that was just too good for them, and the same team were missing 3 of their top players, Diarmuid, Killian O'Connor and Lee Keegan. Do you know, 3 players who get on most teams in the country, and they're sitting in the stand, and it's still like this. So look, they have to find a way, because it's just, like, it's not right. I'm not saying scrap the provincials, because one of my favourite days of the year was always the Munster final in Killarney, and obviously that was when Kerry and Cork were competing at a very high level all the time. It was great games, and they're massive medal. You ask the Tipperary lads and the Cavan lads from last year, that medal will mean the world to them. So I'm not saying scrap it, but I nearly use it as your pre-season before the league. So teams are well up to speed. The league is a great competition already, and imagine how good it would be if you were after a good couple of games as well. So they have to look at something, because it's not entertaining. So we were texting, like I said, I was getting worried. So what are we going to talk about? And like that, it's like you're just like, we're going back to the rules and stuff like that, because the games just aren't good enough at the moment. And realistically, you're not going to get a good game till the semi-final probably.
And Mayo are learning nothing either as they go and play Galway next. Like, and Galway had a real game against Roscommon, and their 2 games were worthless. And that's a terrible thing to say. It's no disrespect to Leitrim and Sligo. It's where they are, but it's the truth. Like, and the other thing then is, like, the worry that I think, and we've done this we've talked about it for years, and I don't want to get into the rights and wrongs of it, but the worry that smaller counties would have is that they're set off to this other competition. They're not part of the main conversation of football in the country, and they're just kind of cast aside, and there's no way back, I suppose. How do we? It's not even how do we address it. It's just that, I suppose, it's easy for me to say to you, look, you're a Kerry player, you don't understand it, but you're from a club like that isn't a big club. Like, I know you play for your regional team and everything like that, but if you guys got success and got up through the ranks, And you'd only want to play kind of senior when you're ready to do it, and you've achieved something to get to that point. Or else it'll be like, great, we're just in the championship by default. We're there. We get hammered by 30 points every year because there's only this many people in our town compared to we're playing against, one of the 2 or 3 Killarney teams, or so on and so forth. You know what I mean? There's just it's a natural thing. Yeah. But if you have a great team that gets together and goes through and wins a couple of things, you'll go and say, Jesus, maybe this time we can do it, and you've earned your spot in it. Like, isn't that ultimately, regardless of how we get it right, we have to fix everything with resources, we have to fix everything with how the levels will work. But if you just have more of a club mentality of your golden generation will have its chance, that's the way to do it, isn't it?
100%. Look, I suppose my own club, like I said, we won a junior, we're intermediate, we're Division 2. If we went to Division 1, would we compete with maybe 1 or 2 teams, but the bigger teams would beat us comfortably? Would we compete in the senior championship? No, we wouldn't. We're an intermediate team. That's our level. The prime example, and they come to mind straight away, is Timplenoe in Kerry. A very small club on the outskirts of Kinmare, and they have a golden generation. If you go to Tyrone and Gavin Crowley and the Spillans, they have a novice shield, a novice medal, a junior shield, a junior medal, an intermediate medal, and they're a senior club now.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have big numbers. They're a small parish outside of Kinmare, but they have a golden generation of players. And that golden generation of players are inspiring these younger kids, and they're developing them. But they started at the bottom, and they've worked their way slowly up, and they've earned their right to be a senior club. They're an example for every other club in Kerry, and even counties. Yeah, you could say a bit of luck, you get a golden generation. Sometimes that generation doesn't come, but you have to earn it to get up there, I think. And at the moment, what's the point? You play a league and you play one championship game where you get hammered, and then you don't kick a ball for 8 months or whatever it is, 6 years. Whereas like people say, it's fine for you to say you're playing for Kerry, you're always at the top table in this. But if you look at Twitter during all these games, players who have played with the lesser counties or are still playing, they're all tweeting the same thing.
Yeah.
And what would you rather? Play one championship game, get hammered, or play teams more of your level with a chance of silverware and a promotion? Like, for me, when I was playing, it was all I wanted to win. I wanted to play in the finals where there's a big crowd, and if you win, you get the medal presentation and you get to bring the cup to this. That's what you want, and that's what the local kids want to see as well. They want to see the local guy bringing the cup into the school. And I think by doing the tiers, you're giving every county that opportunity. At the moment, now the football is a bit lopsided anyway, because you've very few that have the opportunity anyway. But by tiering it, you would have a lot more opportunities for people to have that moment. But it's up to the GAA then to advertise it and show it on TV, because there's no point having these second and third competitions if nobody gets to see it. Yeah. You have to give it the respect that it deserves as well. So look, that's obviously a conversation, but it's worked at club level. Like we've all seen the All-Ireland Club Series, junior, intermediate, senior. They're shown on TV, the buzz it creates around the place. So there's no reason why it wouldn't work at county level, but it's up to the GAA then to give it the respect it deserves, give it the media coverage and the TV coverage.
Yeah. Darren, I couldn't agree more. And it's a bit, hopefully this is like one of the last times this year that we're talking too much about kind of not the actual game. I think it's so important. Like it really is. It's funny. We talk about it being a cliche and stuff like that, but it's the most important thing that's happening at the moment. But we've still got Kerry and Cork to come. We've got Donegal and Tyrone next week. We've got a good Connacht final now and we even got Meath hoping to.
Well, fingers crossed here. Now. There's a couple of big games coming.
Meath in Dublin. I can't say handicap because we're going to do it in the lads are going to guess it in a few minutes, but the bookies definitely don't think Meath have a chance despite scoring 4-22 against Longford. Yeah,
they're still getting big scores. I think the big question will be, will Cluxton be centre back? So, look, to be honest, the one thing about the Dublin game is they played it. Look, there were probably no motivation, whatever, but they were away from home. Motivation was low, and they struggled. Yeah. So if your motivation isn't where it needs to be, or your focus, and you're going away from home, I'm not saying they're going to get beaten,
but can they take it on like that?
It might be a bit more entertaining for all us neutrals, instead of a team going up to Crow Park, wide open space, and Dublin are just swanning around. See, that's the bother with Croke Park. The pitch is so big, teams are gassed after 25 minutes, especially if they're playing in the lower divisions.
Yeah.
Because they're not used to the intensity.
That's it. Well, we'll see what happens anyway. We'll chat in a couple of weeks. I'd say we'll probably the two finals of the hurling will probably take precedence next week. But Darran, that was brilliant stuff. Thanks a million for joining us.
Oh, thanks. Cheers, Mick.
Great stuff from Darran there as always. Really, really great stuff. And some interesting thoughts as well, and not always in unfortunately the most positive, but hopefully that becomes more so as the season goes on. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe to the channel, be it on YouTube or the podcast. We're here with you every Monday with Darran O'Sullivan talking about football. We've got Shane McGrath on hurling as well. We'll have Shane back with us next week.